starting.
All right.
He's been going for about 15 seconds.
You ready? Okay. All right, well, welcome to this month's YR meeting. And you may recognize this. You may have seen the guy who carries it around. And that is our guest speaker tonight. It is Rethwisch, the Cardinal Cowboy. So without further ado, welcome. Thank you. Welcome.
I don't let anybody hold this. I'm independent.
Oh, wow.
I must trust you, but I know who you're affiliated with.
Wow.
What you stand for, so I kind of trust you there. There it is. So I put together a little presentation for you, short, and I'll take off some of the Cardinal Cowboy stuff because it's kind of who I am, but it's not all I stand for, and I don't want to confuse what we're really going to go after here and talk about some kind of important stuff. But I've known it around the world now as a Cardinal Cowboy. I've been in different states as a visitor, and people said, "Oh, who's that guy? I saw him at the World Series, great exposure." And they said, "Oh, that guy with the red cowboy, the Cardinal Cowboy." And somebody pointed out, "That's him right there." I was down in Florida playing baseball after the 2006 World Series. And then it's happened a couple other times. It's just because Cardinals have such a great base, and I figured, hey man, this is kind of fun. I get to share some of the love for the Cardinals, and so what that transpired into is what I originally started off with as something that was just a little bit of fun, turned into an opportunity to get some people's attention, and then use that attention I'm gaining to talk to people about what I believe in and how I can then actually change some lives and make a real difference. I come from a background of educators, so typically a liberal perspective you would imagine because my mom being a public high school teacher, my dad being a private college admissions counselor, but both being very conservative. And I guess that's kind of what we'll talk about tonight is how do you end up wherever that is, and how does that really happen based on your belief system and your experiences in life and what it is that works most for you. And as I talked about some people, we talked about we just had an election, right? Kind of disappointed for some of the people on the Republican side. I think there's a lot of good reason to be excited, and I'll touch on some of that. But a little bit of background about myself. The Cardinal Cowboy thing stems from my die-hard nature to be a professional baseball player, which a lot of people thought I was going to be. And so I'm actually able to control the screen here with my phone. As a computer nerd, I've got a lot of background in technology, so you'll see me change the screen with that. But as a Cardinal fan, I began to realize, so there's one of the first good pictures we might be able to put up there, but that is, some of you, how many of you see me around the Cardinal games and with what I do? So yeah, it's like I said, it started off with something kind of fun, but it's really turned into an opportunity to reach out to people. So back to where this kind of came from, and the hat originally is a picture on my website. How many of you guys have been to cardinalcowboy.com? By now we've figured out 3/4 of the entire St. Louis population has visited my site, given the number of visits that have been there. Now, it might have been a few people coming a couple of times, but there's a lot of big Cardinal fans out there, and by now some of the exposure I've been able to gain, it's by just trying to spread the love of baseball and then kind of transcend that into my message. How many saw the last interview, most recent one, on television with Channel 2? See that? Okay. That is the first time somebody really came to me after finding out what this is really all about. And so that's where I feel like maybe I should spend a little more time. And so I've got you guys, how many of you guys see my jersey that I wear? And it kind of promotes the Cardinal Cowboy, and I hope people then go out to cardinalcowboy.com and hear my message and what I'm about. And the truth is, it is about being a diehard Cards fan, right? That's something you definitely want to be if you're in the St. Louis area. But there's more to it than that. So how many of you have actually seen, how many of you know what is really behind the message from the Cardinal Cowboy? What it's really about. And that's my fault, right? That's my fault for not making that more clear to people. So I think the next jersey that I wear is still going to have the logo and the Cardinal Cowboy on the front of it. You guys have seen, and I'll still wear the baseball pants. And I've upgraded to red cowboy boots instead of turf shoes. Both kind of apply, depending on what your baseball, Cardinals, and your cowboy, your boots. So get a little more attention with the boots. I decided to not cover the boots by putting the baseball pants over, but to actually tuck them in the boots. So now you really see the boots. But again, as a matter of trying to get the attention of people so that they'll. So I'm going to put on the back of the jersey. Now you know what this. Check out what this is really about. Now you know what this is really about. Go to CardinalCowboy.com. Support the Cardinal Cowboy causes. And so by now, given all what I went through, and I'll go back and tell you. So it's turned into a great charity opportunity, and really to get the message out to people who are less fortunate or have had something traumatic happen, or cancer. I work with a lot of groups who talk about cancer. And so back when I was a kid coming up, I'll never forget having the opportunity to be a big fan. Does anybody remember the last time the Cardinals won the World Series before 2006? What year was that?
1982.
1982. So back in 1982 was the last time. I'm going to date myself, and I figure out what I am. By now they've put it on television and everything, so I'm not going to. People ask how old the Cardinal Cowboy is. Well, I say essentially the Cardinal Cowboy started in 1982 when they won the World Series, when Rethwisch was 10 years old. So I've been interviewed. I've been interviewed by stations, and they say, "Cowboy." I understand that some people think that Cardinal Cowboy is 28 or 30, whatever time frame it was, and I'm like, well, the Cardinal Cowboy is, and that's when it was started. I don't want to misrepresent when. I didn't start that at birth, It started when I was 10 years old. And they go, oh, so you started that when you were 10, and therefore that makes sense now with the guys who I know that went to high school with. You say he's not 28, he's 38 or whatever. And yes, Rethwisch is 38. The Cardinal Cowboy was 28. Now I'm 40, so the Cardinal Cowboy is 30. But at that age, that's kind of when the initial thing started. I used to wear cowboy boots as a kid. I remember when I would go with my parents, they had a little cabin we'd all go down to. Down by the cabin in Sullivan, Missouri, Stanton, Missouri, by Merrimack Cabin, there's a boot shop. I couldn't even say where it was located. But we would go there, and every year I'd get a brand new pair of boots. And so that's but I was kind of a city cowboy, right? City slicker, whatever. But I would wear the boots around town, and because we were down at the cabin, 3 or 4 months a year at most, and sometimes a number of weekends until I got to play baseball. When baseball became a big part of my life, when I went to play for the Red Sox, and it's no lie, I did play for the Red Sox, Baldwin Red Sox. I interject that after I meet a pretty girl, so no, Baldwin. But diehard Cards fan. Cardinals won the World Series and back again in '85 and '87, and just baseball was kind of a way of life. And I espoused. Many of you know, I was involved in a fatal accident, so we'll jump ahead of that in a minute. But became a really excited baseball fan. But at the same time, before I even really knew much or understood a whole lot about the Cardinals, my dad had me in the backyard taking ground balls every day. And it ties into my story, my theme, which is anything you work hard enough at, anything you really are dedicated to, you can go on and become one of the best at, and therefore make a great living and really get the help of that, too, no matter what's happened to you. And I had quite a bit of a setback a number of years later, but had developed in the interim, developed into a pretty good ball player. And decided I'd go to college and play baseball. Ended up transferring to Central Methodist, now University, and the coach there had known me for years, and they said, all right, he's not the 6'3" guy, but he's got the athletic ability, and we'll get him some exposure, and come here, and he'll be our shortstop. And at the same time, my dad had been the college admissions counselor at that point, 25 years, where he graduated there, met my mom there. We're still married now, almost coming up on 50 years, I think. He started working there. I said, I'll go to Central Methodist now, and they said, let's play soccer. So I went, and I said, definitely I know Coach Mose, and it's not the greatest soccer program in the world, but it'll be fun. And I had walked on to the spring team at SLU the year before when I was going to St. Louis University freshman year and sophomore year. Played with Brian McBride and Mike Sorber, and attempted to walk on. And saw other guys who had many people thought were better than, but I went to the Lutheran school and not the Catholic school, so Catholic guys got a spot on the team, but the Lutheran guys, they kind of know who you were. But I said, all right, fine, I'll go to Central, play soccer, and then in the spring I'll play baseball. That's really what I'm here for, but let's play some soccer. Coach Mo was a great soccer player, played for the Armenian national team back in the day, and used to do these tricks. He'd flip the ball up on his shoulders, and I'm like, wow, this guy's so good. But Central Methodist was not the soccer guy. So needless to say, I didn't make the SLU team in the spring for soccer. So all right, with everything I've got going on, I'm going to do this. I know I've got the ability. We got to get the right exposure. We're going to make this happen. So went to Central Methodist, playing soccer now, and about 3 weeks in, we're 3 weeks into the season, which is a month before school starts. you come down early to play sports, or 2 weeks or whatever it was, and we just played our first or second game, and game went into overtime. It was homecoming weekend, and my parents were coming down for homecoming, but the football game was the center of the homecoming weekend. And I had a girl I had been dating for a few months at that point, and told her, and without my parents knowing, I said, well, great you guys drove down to see me, but you do that all the time anyway, Dad, and whatever, but I'm going to meet the girl back in St. Louis, and I'm going to ride with a couple of my buddies, and they're going to go watch the Eureka High School soccer game. And so, the Eureka High School team, this is the goalie that was from Eureka. Eureka's a really good soccer program in St. Louis. He was their goalie, came to Central Methodist, and we all become buddies as quickly as you can. 3-4 weeks a month that we've been there with practice and the season starting. And coming down through and ready to meet, I said, meet me at the 7-Eleven in Eureka. At that time, not everybody had a cell phone. I'm dating myself here. The accident happened when I was 19, so that was 3 or 4 years ago. Maybe a little longer than that. But yeah, coming around on Highway 109, I at that time had actually, I was taking a nap in the back seat, and or at least I don't remember what happened. So I'm assuming I was probably taking a nap. It was a 2-hour ride back from Fayette to St. Louis, and it got as far as Eureka, close to the school, within miles of the destination, a few hundred yards. If you really look, it's actually just down the road, and. The drunk driver was spinning his car at us up the corner, and there's pictures with this too that I might we can talk about. But you can see them on CardinalCowboy.com. And the truck was spinning at us out of control. It rained a little bit. No excuse to be drunk and driving, right? And truck came at us in a spinning, motion. So at least it wasn't head on, but hit us head on. But we hit the side of his. It wasn't head to head. It was side to head. And hit us like this, flipped over us, and went down the hill. And Jimmy was obviously part of the driver was part of the accident. Jimmy Weatherly in the front seat was badly injured. And we were on the side of the road, and apparently I was coherent and having a conversation. And they're about to, Sean Soul, and I looked in front in the back right to see Jimmy Barnes, the driver, was in bad shape. So Jimmy Barnes got into the ambulance. It was down around the corner. Thank God. The fire station was very close, and they pulled an ambulance out, came and got us. That was instrumental to my survival. And so Jimmy Barnes is in really bad shape. Jimmy Weatherly's face, you could see his skull. It was a mess. And I was coherent, but the guy who hit us, I won't say his name, but I'll tell you what happened later. He's in the ambulance, and I was next in line, and he would be okay. So they're going to send the ambulance off with those guys, and we go on the next trip. So just in time, or coincidentally, or however you want to look at this, somebody looking down, I started to go into seizures, and that's a pretty torturous event. I don't remember it, but imagine tightening every muscle you have in your body over and over again without any kind of control, and losing, essentially control of your muscles. And that compelled the doctors and the ambulance people at the time to say, hold on a second, pull that drunk guy out who doesn't have a whole lot of damage, a little scratch on his face, and put Carter into the ambulance. And if I hadn't made that particular first trip to the hospital, it would have been over. And somebody's, however you want to look at that, I get into my religious perspective, but I'll take the hat off now to kind of talk a little bit more about that. Serious question. So got in the ambulance and proceeded to the hospital, and they shoot you up with a drug called Dilantin. Anybody familiar with Dilantin? If you've ever met anybody who's had seizures and has treatment for that, Dilantin can immediately stop the seizures because it can be very damaging to your body. It can usually have extremist expulsions of your body. So the shot with Dilantin stops the seizures, but also can induce coma, right? So then I go into a coma, and I'm at the hospital, and they say, this is not good. So then my parents get the dreaded call, and they're on their way back now. Well, we saw our son for a few minutes, and now the football game's over, and they're not too far behind. And I said, you need to come to the hospital right now. And my dad is very well educated, and he said, I know there's a couple of questions you can't ask because they won't answer, but I know there's a couple of questions you can, and we'll figure out what you're doing. And they said, can I talk to my son? And I said, no. See how they get me a little wound up, but at that point, he knew it was pretty serious. So across the street from him also was a good friend of his who's a state trooper at the same time. So the state trooper had already heard about the accident and said, hey, Braxton, I'll follow you to the hospital. Went to the hospital to find out that Jimmy Barnes at that point was not going to make it. He died 2 days later. But if he was going to survive, he was going to be blind. Because they hit his head, damaged the part of the brain that controls that. I had executive skills damage. You can see the scar on my head if you look close enough. And many people say they haven't noticed it, but bright light, you can still see it. How much I can do about it, I can spend a lot of money to take that off or whatever. It's kind of part of who I am. And so Jimmy Weatherly was going to be okay, and he actually got out of the hospital much sooner than I did. But he had major damage to his face. Now you can still see him. But he's a great guy. He's happily married with a couple of kids. And Sean Soule was then out of the hospital fairly quickly also. Didn't have much, fortunately, didn't have much damage given the circumstances of that accident where he seated and all that. But they had told my parents at that point, hey, we got to be honest with you, we give Carter less than 50-50 odds to live or die. That's pretty hard to deal with, right? As parents, so I say a lot of what happened here in this particular event, I was out, right? I didn't experience a lot of except for the initial pain and recovery, but it's very hard for parents to hear, so it's very, very difficult for them. But even given so, because I still espouse my athletic prowess, or whatever you want to say, and determination, I learned also, and you don't just learn how to be an athlete by playing baseball, you learn how to be competitive and ambitious and goal-oriented, willing to never quit, and all these great things that I think baseball really helps people to develop, softball. So, given less than 50-50 odds in a coma, they pulled, I was tied down, strapped down, because they tether you so you can't pull your, I had a ventilator down my throat. You're not supposed to be able to pull any tubes out or anything like that. But I did get my arms out of these restraints and pulled the ventilator out of my own throat. After they had told my parents he's probably not going to make it. And when that happened, they said, well, looks like he's going to survive. So thank God, right? So then continue with my recovery, and I remember my sister coming up to the hospital, and I'm walking to the hospital like this, and just for about 5 years. I mean, it took me a good 5 years to completely, and some people say, or we know what happened to you. I said, you think it was bad now, you're supposed to move on to an accident. But they, at that point, I said, you had to go to a counselor, right? And so I talked to a counselor, and this is a psychologist, he's a well-educated doctor, and they started to essentially, and this is something that's kind of disturbing to me, and I guess it gets tied into, well, what can you legally say, and what do we say is the best approach? And for me, it's just like, give whoever you're treating the best opportunity they can mentally as they can physically, and psychologically, you need to be prepared to deal with it. And they started to talk about how I was just probably going to have somebody take care of me, and not be able to function in the same capacity I had, and just kind of setting expectations, right? For the way I was going to be for the rest of my life. And the first visit they started off with that, my dad was there, my mom was there, and my dad got into that conversation with this doctor telling us about that, and I don't completely remember this, I was pretty much in recovery mode. They said, we appreciate your opinion, and my dad was pretty aggravated at that point. He said, we're out of here, we're never meeting with that doctor again, and we're not going to allow him or anyone else to deprogram what we've helped to raise Carter with the belief that he can accomplish anything he sets his mind to, whether he's the 5'9" shortstop that's not faster than everybody, or stronger than everybody, or bigger than everybody, or more athletic than anybody, but works harder than anybody. And he didn't make it into Major League Baseball, which was my goal. When I'm in high school, having people come up to me in the mall and say, are you that guy they call Ozzie Smith? And I'm thinking, I've got what it takes, I'm going to make this happen. So, hey man, now you're barely lucky to survive, or even maybe you were supposed to be dead, first off, 50-50 odds to survive the accident, and then after proving that, surviving that, now you're not going to be able to take care of yourself, and that's a pretty heavy load to take if you miss it. So here I am, and complete reset of where I'm at in life, and I've now got to reprogram myself with major executive skills. Executive skills are the front part of your brain, and so all of the functionality was there, but what controlled everything was scrambled. So it was really, there were some people who were like, ooh, what's wrong with Carter? And they didn't know what I'd gone through, and so this guy sometimes, what's up? I'm off kilter here. But it took, like I said, a long period of time to completely recover. So it ties into what I believe and the ambition I had, and the thing which espouses the potentially pertinent party affiliation, I espouse these days. And to me, it's not a matter of Democrat or Republican, it's a matter of free, ambitious, doing what's best for everyone versus dependent, needy, helpless, and taking care of the few people that make themselves feel better, and I'll get into that a little bit, and always succumb to whatever everybody else's decisions are that are going to affect you, rather instead of you taking care of your own life. And that's really the kind of the difference you see there. You see it in these different people. So where do they come from? How do they develop these particular perspectives? So after that accident, go through, finish college on time, decided to go back to school, stay in school. I actually never dropped out. I went back 2 weeks later. I probably shouldn't have, but I said, I'm not quitting school. I've got buddies of mine who quit school. Their parents got divorced and they're quitting school. Or they didn't get the job, part-time job, or whatever. I'm like, I don't care. I went through a coma. I'm not quitting. I'm like, whoa, okay, go do that. So finished the semester at Central and decided, okay, what are we doing? And a lot of it was honestly based on the fact that the girlfriend who I wanted to be close to, she was nice, great gal, I could see her more, and they also have a little more closer care. And then my parents got quite an argument about if he's down at Central Methodist, that's 2.5 hours away from home, but he goes to St. Louis University, he's 20 minutes from home. And what if something needs something? It goes into another seizure. And so it ended up the decision was made, and I decided that I wanted to go back to SLU, and then continued there and graduated on time. My GPA wasn't great, but I got a college degree on time, where I feel a lot of people didn't do that. I kind of got out of college and figured out, well, this college degree's pretty cool, but you got to set yourself above. What can I do? I mean, everybody, my parents both had their master's degree. My dad's finished his PhD coursework and dissertation. Oral exams, but didn't ever write the dissertation. What they call all ABD, all the dissertation. But a very smart guy. So I said, I can't let my parents down here. I'm going to grad school. And I started up on my own. My dad said, well, whatever you want to do, you go for it. And you can live with the house as long as you're doing something productive, and we'll help you. So I went and got a master's degree. At the same time, I got into this computer technology stuff, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But decided I would apply to, after selling computers for a little bit, and got in there, was great at selling computers, and I had all the different vendors with a page about each one of them in my little manual I would carry around to show customers. And I talked about, here's the breakdown, right, and how often they need repairs, so you need to buy this extended service contract. And I gave an explanation about it and think about how the technology advances so quickly that when they come to your house for the repair 3 years later, you're likely to get something that's quite a bit better. And if they can't fix it, then you're going to get another computer 2 or 3 years newer. So I always sold the most extended service contracts. We called that the cheese. You get cheese on that, right? Anybody that buy the cheese. That's an inside term for the service contract industry, especially electronic stores. But anyway, but then decided, hey, I don't want to do sales for the rest of my life. Ironically, that's back when I'm doing now, that I run my own company, but got into, I said, all right, I can fix these computers pretty well. And computer consulting was a big deal back then. And so I got on with a firm, a buddy of mine who worked with me in Circuit City, had started a consulting company, got me into his firm, and then I got on at Citigroup. And was around and just copying data off of these old computers, getting ready for the new allotment of brand new updated Windows NT full row computers, right? From Windows NT 3. So you know, now we know how old. But became part of that team, and they said, hey, this guy's pretty sharp, why don't we offer him a job? And my dad and I kind of strategized and said, why don't you play this contractor thing out? I said, I appreciate the offer, but I'm going to continue to try to see what I can do. And my consulting firm said there's a job down in a small brewery that many of you may have known of, based in St. Louis. Used to be based out of St. Louis, now based out of Belgium, I think, called Anheuser-Busch. Yeah. So got a job on there. I had the second level support I interviewed with, and I interviewed with the first level support. Second level support didn't make me take a technical test. They just kind of talked to you about whatever. And the first level made me take a test. And because I was self-taught, I didn't know all the technical things. And I failed the test and didn't get the job at the first level, but because I hadn't fallen asleep and because I didn't tell them, one of the guys who interviewed, they said, until they told me almost fell asleep in the interview. The other guy told me he was going to use them to get to the networking group. He really wanted to do it, so I think so. And I didn't do either one of those two things, so they said, we'll take this guy. And I remember I had Microsoft Outlook listed on my resume because when you load Microsoft Office, by default, it was included. I I sure had some experience with it because I launched it a couple times and didn't even know exactly what it was or how it worked. But I realized later that was the email piece, and so now I'm the support person for the email team. And, but I had more knowledge than a lot. So what's a PST, a personal store? Okay, I'll figure out what a PST is really quick. And started to, and within a year and a half, was then running and moved out of the first level support into the server team because I built servers now in my basement. Right? What else do you do except you got a DSL connection, which is brand new back then, and you got a hot connection always to the internet, and I can set up a server, and I can get my email through my web browser, Outlook web access, anywhere I'm at, through a server that's actually in my family room, in my house, right? So, progressed to get into the email operations team, and then was maintaining the big corporate email clustered servers. I'll never forget one time walking up and we had a problem, and it hadn't yet been diagnosed by the operating system's automatic checking system called Compact Insight, I believe it's called. And we knew there was a problem because we had hundreds of users calling in saying, there's a problem here, what's wrong? So I'm in charge of the server and it doesn't show up in my Insight manager, and is there something failed or not? So I drive up to the main corporate office right next to the big Budweiser in the 202 building, and I go up to the third floor where I've got security clearance, and I'm looking at this giant server and all these servers and everything. I've been up there many times, and I go, that particular hard drive's got some red flashing light on it that hasn't shown up in anything that you can see externally, but to me that's the problem. So I go up there and I go, yes, okay. And everybody's happy, their servers, their email's now completely accessible, not being slowed down, but everything was redundant, and when that drive, that's why you have all these redundant drives, all the data had been duplicated across the spread, so there's actually 2 or 3 copies of one of these drives, and now put a new drive in. Joe, get up here. Joe Seconder, great guy. Get up here, put in a drive and let it replicate live, and everything's good. So I got into that kind of career, and then everybody else, and this is where we're really getting into the political side of things. When we talk about that transition out of Rethwisch, what happened? It really came up kind of my point I make to a lot of people. If you want to talk about where it's really at home, talk about what happened in Rethwisch. Wow. And so that'll be my transition right there. Continued to work at Anheuser-Busch. Became an employee back when they weren't hiring anybody. Hiring is cut off, but every year we'll allow 50 people or so to apply, and we'll consider them before they have to make their exit, because if they've been here 4 years, we no longer let you be a career contractor. You have to, at a certain point, become an employee or you're gone. And so I said, I definitely want to, and they wanted me, they said, so I applied and did the whole process, and there were 2 out of the 50 people that applied that became employees, and I was one of them, along with another guy, who now is part of theme parks, which is no longer a part of Anheuser-Busch. But both of us are gone. Anyway, and so are a whole lot of them. So, continued my career there, and then I started getting wind of this takeover talk that they had heard about, right? And I heard about the whole InBev thing, and I'd done my research, and I'm digging in here, and I guess it might have been after it all happened, but right while it was happening, and I said to people, I go, now that Warren Buffett has made a major investment into the Anheuser-Busch, and the Anheuser-Busch people played it off as, hey, Warren Buffett just knows that we're going to grow like crazy. He's making a strong investment. Well, Warren Buffett knew that there was a matter of time. His money that he puts in 5% ownership, which was more than Bush's owned at that point, was going to turn into a substantial gain because the stock would be over the normal takeover from, I think it was $56, and they finally bought him out at $75 or something. Wow. So that's a big jump in 2008 when we got a terrible economy. But I started doing research, and the story goes, I'll give this kind of as an insight to how some of this whole political perspective goes. And most of it's geared around business, right? And power and money, right? What politics amounts to many times. And so, and power more than anything, because there's one group that does business and they're known for, that's where they get their money, and the other group is more geared towards, I like to have the power to help you. That's why I'm telling you, help you. Do what I tell you, help you, and give you things that you need to just barely survive. Give you a little more perspective there. But Warren Buffett had inside information, and not known as an inside trader per se, but there's a discussion that I read about where he's on the board with a guy named George Lamont. George Lamont started Ambev after making millions and billions of dollars as a banker